Close personal friends of mine know that I am a very big Spider-Man fan. As much as I love Deadpool, Spider-Man's always going to be my first and number one favorite superhero. I have been reading Spider-Man for as long as I can remember. In fact, the very first comic that I ever purchased was a Marvel team-up comic between Spider-Man and Iron Man. It came out in the 70s, but I actually purchased it in the 6th grade at a used bookstore. Of course, I'd been reading comics before then, but my parents had bought them for me. This is always going to stick out in my mind as the very first comic that I ever purchased. I identify with Spider-Man on a very, very, very personal level. This isn't because Spider-Man has really cool powers or a really cool design. Both of these are very true, and I'm sure that's the reason that I first picked up the book. But I relate to Spider-Man on a very identifiable level. And not so much Spider-Man, but actually Peter Parker. Peter Parker is the reason that I actually read the Spider-Man books. So when I heard that for the Marvel Now book, someone else is going to be taking over as Spider-Man in Superior Spider-Man #1, of course this made me a little weary. This isn't to say that I don't think other people can be Spider-Man. In fact, I love Ultimate Spider-Man right now. I think Miles Morales is a great character. And when Ben Reilly took over as Spider-Man, I was actually okay with it. This is a little bit of a gray area, because Ben Reilly's actually still technically Peter Parker. He's a clone, after all. So he has all of the same personality traits and the same memories that make him Peter Parker, just there's a couple other things added on there. Also, Ben Reilly's Spider-Man costume is actually my favorite Spider-Man costume to date. Why am I talking about all this? Well, I just read Spider-Man 698, the comic that came out about a week or so ago. And I have to say, I have never been more angry at reading a comic in my entire life. What were you thinking, Dan Slott? What makes this comic so bad, you ask? Well, let's take a look at it and see. The comic starts off with an establishing shot of the vault. For those who don't know, the vault is the maximum security prison designed to hold the worst of the worst supervillains. The alarm's going off, and security's going to check out to see what triggered it. They go by Spider Slayer is secure. They go by Morbius is secure. They go by Lizard, the Lizard is secure. Because apparently, they decide what wing of the vault you're going to be in by who you arch. That doesn't make any sense. They finally get to Doc Ock's room, and this is apparently where the alarm's going off from, because they all know to go in there, and they see that the doctor for Doc Ock is the person who set off the alarms. Why did he set off the alarms? Because Doc Ock is dying. Yes, he breached security protocol to let everybody know that Doc Ock is dying. The entire vault is not being guarded. All their guards are in the same place because one of their inmates is dying? That doesn't make any sense. We then have an expositional page letting everyone know about all the things they need to know so that they'll be up to date with this story arc. And then we see Spider-Man web-slinging through New York. He's like, this is going to be the best day of my life. Everything is going great. This is very uncharacteristic of Spider-Man because he has what's called the Parker luck. And so often when things can't go wrong, they will. Spider-Man sees that there is a deli shop being held up by a supervillain. Apparently, this guy really needs his crack money because he's going all the way to this deli instead of robbing a bank or something like that. Spider-Man doesn't think this is weird and just punches him in the face, knocking him out. The cop lets Spider-Man know that this is what's known as a bluffer. This guy wasn't actually a supervillain. He just made a suit that looked supervillainy so that he could try and get around and hold up all these places, look intimidating. And also, he won't go away for as long if he gets caught, because he technically didn't actually have a weapon. Spider-Man doesn't seem to really care, just leaves. Then we see Peter Parker taking off the mask, and that he actually has a scar on his cheek from the last time that he fought Hobgoblin, which was an issue before. That's great, except in the next panel the scar is gone. Yes, Peter Parker says that he heals very fast, but he's not Wolverine. So he checks his messages. There are 4 messages. The first one's from the Daily Bugle saying subscription's about to run out. Then MJ saying that she wants to meet up with him because they had plans. Then J. Jonah Jameson Sr. says that Aunt May is in the hospital and that he said he would visit her today. And then Max Modell, his boss, says that he has an evaluation that he needs to come in for today. Peter has a very busy day. So, Peter gets dressed, goes to Horizon Labs where he works, does his evaluation, does exceedingly well, then goes to MJ's club, known as MJ's, real creative MJ, and they decide that they're going to go visit Aunt May together. Peter also says he doesn't know why they're not together anymore, and they're really teasing the fact that maybe they're finally going to get back together at the end of Amazing Spider-Man, which would be great. I would welcome that. They go to see Aunt May in the hospital. She's having a hard time with her physical therapy, but she's doing fine. She's doing great otherwise. Then Spider-Man's Avengers card goes off. Peter picks it out of his jacket and says, "Oh, looks like I need to go." And MJ makes up an excuse for him. It was totally non-conspicuous, too. He was like, "Oh, look, my Spider-Man card. Duh, means cell phone. Max needs me." That didn't look like you actually had a conversation there, Peter. You just looked at that card that clearly has Spider-Man on it. Now you need to go. But he heads over to the vault where the Avengers are waiting for him. That's right, Captain America, Hawkeye, Spider-Woman, and Wolverine. Because when I think Avengers, I think Wolverine and Spider-Woman. They tell him that Doc Ock is dying and that his last request is to see Peter Parker. No, he just said Peter Parker. He didn't say, "I want to see Peter Parker." He just said Peter Parker. Now, clearly, they might have an inkling that he has figured out that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And that's why he's saying Peter Parker. But still. And they called Spider-Man here for that, really? But Spider-Man just agrees to go see Doc Ock. On the way, Wolverine tells him if he wants, he can make it real quick and kill him a little early. And even Hawkeye comments on how stupid this is. There are people all around who can hear him say that. And Doc Ock has a doctor. He would know if he was murdered. So Spider-Man goes into Doc Ock's cell by himself. And Doc Ock repeats, "Peter Parker." "Yes, I am Peter Parker." "No, I am Peter Parker." "Yes, you were, but now I am." That's the twist at the end of this story arc. Ugh. It's a brain swap story arc. This is the last story arc that they're going to go out on in Amazing Spider-Man. Brain swap story arcs are stupid. They can only be done as jokes, like Joe Quesada did in Ultimate Spider-Man when Spider-Man and Wolverine switched brains. And the audience was even in on the fact that the premise was a joke. It was called Jump the Shark, for God's sake. Not to mention that this doesn't make any sense. When did they switch brains? Did they switch brains the last time they saw each other? At the ends of the earth? If so, it would make sense for Spider-Man's dialogue to stay the same with other characters as he's trying to keep up the facade that he is Peter Parker. But why has his thought bubbles been the same? Why has he thought like he's Peter Parker? And yes, they include the fact that Doc Ock somehow still has Peter Parker's memories, because you know that makes sense. But still, his thought patterns would be drastically different, and they haven't been. Maybe this Octobot that was crawling around, that's what made them switch personalities. But then again, that doesn't make sense either, because Doc Ock was already saying Peter Parker before that Octobot was crawling around. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think that this is what's going to issue in the new Spider-Man reboot. I don't think the Superior Spider-Man is going to be Doc Ock and Spider-Man's body, even though Peter Parker apparently died in Doc Ock's body when it fails a second later. But this is still stupid. This is a really dumb way to go out on a really technically 700 issue run of a book. I just can't get over how much I hate this book. I would rather read Flashpoint than read this book. I would rather read One More Day than read this book. I would rather read Steampunk Sarah Palin than read this book. I would rather read an autobiographical graphic novel written and illustrated by Rob Liefeld than read this book. This comic is awful. It pisses me off. Nerd rant over.